Today we'll be talking about a hands-on preview for Resident Evil 4 Remake and a review of Bayonetta 3. Welcome back, gamers. Before we get into today's news, if you would do me a favor, smash the like button, subscribe if you haven't already to support the channel, and of course leave any feedback, thoughts, or constructive criticism in the comments below. Now let's get into it. Alright, so first up we're looking at GameSpot's write-up for the preview of Resident Evil 4 Remake. Just a few things off the top. I don't even think it really needs to be said, but the game looks visually stunning. They're going for a darker theme as far as the aesthetics and the story, it appears. Concerning the story, the original Resident Evil 4 had a cohesive story that masterfully blended tense, scary moments with the camp and bravado of a 90s action movie to make an endearing story that has helped make Resident Evil 4 stand the test of time as one of the best action horror games to date. Now, while the Resident Evil 4 remake producer Hirabashi-san has hinted at wanting to keep many of those elements from the original the same, there is also more of an emphasis on the darker themes in the story of the remake. From the GameSpot article, they noted that they got to play about 30 minutes of the Resident Evil 4 remake, and they emphasized that a lot of the changes in the opening hours were to set a darker mood, just a darker theme in general to the story, and giving you more of a feel of a survival horror game, something more akin to the Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes. Story and tone aside, there are some major gameplay changes as well, bringing Resident Evil 4 Remake closer to the gameplay of the Resident Evil 2 and 3 remake, where the player will now be able to move while shooting, for one. There's knife durability, and also you'll be getting prompts for executables. What I think is might be the biggest change is the ability to crouch and to sneak around, although it doesn't appear that you'll be able to stealth your way through entire sections of the game. So for the overall changes though, it seems to be steering the remake in a slightly more survival horror oriented approach, much closer to that of the remake, the most recent Resident Evil remakes. There's also more of a focus on Leon as a character. He still has his snappy one-liners here and there, but his character background itself seems to be in line with the more darker theme of the story in the remake, where he's struggling with the events of Raccoon City, having some type of PTSD apparently. One thing from the original to point out, that's pointed out in the article here, is the Ganados were somewhat revolutionary in the original game for their distinct movements, like ducking out of the way of your crosshair and holding their hands in front of their face to block shots. And in the remake, it seems that they've dialed that type of behavior up quite a bit, and they feel even more unpredictable. Whether or not Capcom will truly be able to recapture the magic of the original is, we'll just have to wait and see until the game is released, but based off of the preview here, I can say I'm rather hopeful. I'm pretty excited. We're going to be moving on to Game Informer's write-up for the review of Bayonetta 3, and reading from the opening paragraph, it says here, by the end of Bayonetta 3's third chapter, it's an opening on a scale that dwarfs most video games. Buildings twist and crumble like flimsy plastic, giant craters pockmark the earth, and mountain-sized creatures level entire cities. The bombastic culmination of an opening 3 hours that feel like they're running a mile a minute, never-ending barrage of stimuli. From its opening seconds, we're going to skip ahead a bit here. From its opening seconds, you're thrown into large-scale fights, necessitating you to juggle numerous enemies at once while switching weapons, summoning giant monsters, and dodging attacks. And to that end, when you're playing as Bayonetta, it is the best the series has ever felt. This is largely due to how Bayonetta 3 changes the series formula. The game no longer regulates infernal demons, or basically large monsters Bayonetta summons to fight alongside her, to cutscenes at the end of a boss fight. They're an entire mechanic now. Perhaps the defining characteristic of Bayonetta 3 though is an absurd amount of options and variety, and I'm skipping through kind of paragraph by paragraph, just reading the highlight from each or every other one. So getting back to the article, this all moves along at an incredible speed. Bayonetta's pace is nearly non-stop, consistently throwing new enemies, bosses, and set pieces at you and asking you to deal with them. For what it's worth, Bayonetta 3's story is the most comprehensible in the series, which is to say it's not largely gibberish, as the article states. The story does, however, introduce the weakest parts of Bayonetta 3, all of the levels in which you don't play as Bayonetta. Early on, the new character Viola is introduced, a young punk from a different dimension who needs Gian and Bayonetta to help her save the multiverse. Summarizing and ending the article here, it states, but that's a small small complaint at the bottom of a mountain of compliments. Bayonetta 3, for the vast majority of its runtime, is an absolute blast, and they gave it an overall 8.25. And that'll be all for this video. Thank you so much for watching the video, and if there was anything I missed or you just want to make some suggestions for the next video, go ahead and drop a comment, like the video, subscribe if you haven't already, it helps more than you know, and of course, as always, thanks for watching Game X Affinity.